All right, it's 3 o'clock. Call this meeting to order.
Your mic is dead.
Hello.
Hello, there we go. There I am. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. We have a 21-point agenda. So I would, well, first of all, were we proof of notification? We posted at the courthouse and everywhere where we need to be. All right, good. And I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. We have a 21-point agenda. All right, motion by McGuire, second by Caro. Any discussion on the agenda? I will mention that I am going to be moving a few items around to accommodate people's schedules. So I will let you know as we get when I'm moving things around. So, all right, all those in favor of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. That was, I believe, Supervisor Turk, are you online?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
All right. Can you see if Linda Gentis is online? I can't.
He is not.
He's not? Okay. All right, so this is our first meeting of this particular body with WebEx. So I just want to remind supervisors and anyone who is going to be speaking that we will need to speak into the microphone so that people online can hear. If you are a petitioner and will be speaking, we will have you come probably to that microphone right there and speak into that if there are questions so that our supervisors and citizens online can hear everything that's being said. If you are online, I will ask that you please stay muted unless you would like to speak. And then at that point, you can unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, you would do *6 to mute yourself and *6 to unmute yourself. All right. So with that, I think the first thing we need to do is approve. Item number 4 would be approval of the June 6 minutes. Everyone have a chance to take a look at those. I would entertain a motion to approve those. Yes, we pull it forward. It's on. Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the June 6 minutes.
All right, motion by Fleming.
I'll second.
Second by Turk. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, our minutes are approved. Item number 5 is public comment. I think most people here, are you here for specific zoning petitions? So we will be having a dark skies presentation, which is for informational purposes for our committee and the citizens of Richland County. And if there are questions at that point, I will allow some questions when we get to that as well. All right, so then moving on, we have no consent items this time, so we will go right into our zoning petitions. That brings us to the first one, which is CKC Partnership Chitwood Petition. So, Director Bindle, would you like to start by giving us a summary? And then if we have questions for the petitioners, or how would you like to handle it this time? I think that's the most efficient, isn't it?
Yeah. For the petition right now, it is CKC partnership. Ted Chitwood is part owner of the partnership, and the goal is to separate out the house and a couple buildings with some acres, and then the rest of the land will stay in the CKC partnership. So it's just separating out the buildings and 2 acres, 3.3 acres.
So the total that they're asking to split off is 3.3 acres. And is there already a septic on that property?
Yes, there is. I'm Ted Chitwood. This is my brother, Jim.
Thank you for coming today.
Yes. It's technically by the survey 3.304 acres, but there is septic on there. There's a storage shed and a grain bin.
Okay.
In the package, a CSM. It's already been drawn out. It shows that already.
And it was approved by the township?
Yes. Yes, it was.
I knew that, but I just wanted it said for everyone. All right. Does any of the committee members have questions about this request? I'm gonna go with that's a no. All right. So in that case, I would entertain a motion to approve this rezoning request. Motion by Carol, second by McGuire. Any further discussion on this request? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, you have your approval.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. All right, that brings us to the next petition, which is the Mellon petition.
This application, Kurt and Nancy just bought this parcel. It's 29 acres and it was existing since 1988. It's non-conforming, so it's going to be brought into conforming so they can build a house on it.
So just to clarify, what you mean by non-conforming is it was a parcel of less than 40 acres and we didn't rezone it at the time. Is that,
The lot, they adopted county zoning October 30th of 1984. The lot was created in 1988, so that makes it non-conforming, illegal.
okay. And how big did you say the lot is now? 29 acres, okay. And it's, am I right though, it's supposed to be at least 40?
35 acres.
35 is this, okay. I was thinking it was 40, but you're right, it's 35. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Carroll?
Yeah, I was just curious what precipitated getting the rezoning clarified now.
That's my sister. She went to the house.
Speaking to the microphone, please, sorry.
She's my sister. This land is right next to some land that I own. And she wants to build a house. She currently lives in South Carolina.
I believe it's on.
Yeah. You just gotta speak.
You just got to get closer. It's on already.
Okay. She currently, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
She currently lives in South Carolina, wants to move back to Wisconsin. It's a beautiful building site. Like I said, it's right, it borders my land and she has access through my land to get, to build this home.
Is it changing ownership to her?
They have already purchased the land. So
Did it change ownership from you to her?
No,
Oh.
no, it was from somebody. It was a
Somebody else.
private.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I would entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Carol,
Second.
second by Fleming. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Request has been
Thank you.
approved.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, that brings us to the Jurgensen petition.
the application is for a recreational rental. And existing home that's not being used right now, so they want to rent it out as a recreational rental,
Short-term rental, correct?
short-term rental.
Yeah. And so we have to,
It's a
we just have to
conditional-
approve it as a recreational rental. This is the first one we've done. I got on here. All right. Any questions?
I have a question. What's the longest that you would be renting it out at a time? Is there a stipulation for that as,
Pull it towards you. Pull it towards you, yeah. There you go. And then get close. Sorry, it takes a little getting used to.
the longest? Yeah, because this is it's listed as a short-term rental. So what would be the longest you would?
We don't know until we put it out for rent.
Is there a,
There's no time.
there's no time frame?
Might be a month, might be 6 months.
Most likely it's going to be less than a month because, I mean, if it's going to be longer than that, they're going to look for a long time.
But there isn't a time frame that's the maximum?
No.
Or the minimum or?
We don't define how long a short-term rental can rent for to one individual. Is that the question you're asking
Mhm.
essentially?
It's for us to know and them to know as well, I guess.
Right,
So they know if, yeah.
okay. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Fleming. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
second by Turk. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, have approval. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, I don't know how to, is it Gothel? Gothel? Gaethel? Sorry, okay, the Gaethel petition.
This application is for conditional use. It's replacing an existing mobile home with a new mobile home. And zoning ordinance requires to be a conditional use.
Even though there was one already there, if you want to put another one on, you have to get approval again.
Yes.
Okay,
Did I hear that right? It's gonna be one existing mobile home and connected to another one?
No, it's taking the existing mobile home and replacing it with a new one, or newer one.
anyone have any questions on that one? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Is this in a mobile home park or is this a separate piece of property?
Separate piece of property.
Okay.
Use the mic, please.
All right. All right, motion by Carol,
Second.
second by Fleming. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Our approval, thank you. Thank you. All right, we have the Aspenson Callaway petition.
This application is for an area down by the Wisconsin River. I think it's a Oregon hamlet area, but it's a bunch of lots that were created but were never developed. And then Aspenson also has land that's around it. And it's going to combine the small blocks of land with the rest of the land that's next to it, and then they're splitting it, create a new lot for to be built on.
And the lot will be 2.5 acres. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve. Motion by McGuire,
Second.
second by Fleming. Any other discussion? Mr. Carroll?
The map, I just want to make sure I understand which lot it is we're talking about.
So if you were to look at the map, how you're looking at it, if you were to split the lot horizontally right down the middle, it would be the top portion of that lot towards the back property of the neighbor's field there. So actually, if you were to move off to the right, I believe, unless it's just highlighted, I can't. So right where your finger is at right now, if that's zoned
This
for
right here?
agricultural,
Just so the record, here's one of the blocks. Here's another one blocks. There's one R1. This is a lot that's being added to the two lots. You can see the hash mark right here is going to be the split of the land. This is the land being bought. This is going to be kept back.
All right. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, item F, the Grimm petition.
If you look at the maps, you can kind of see that there is an area that's zoned part R2, then part of it's zoned ag forestry. It's one lot. They're being combined together to make two lots. It's actually one lot right now, but it's going to be two different zonings. They're combining the lot or the land to be all as two lots created, but it's going to be all zoned R2 with two buildable lots.
So it's 6 acres total, but it'll be 2 lots. So 3 acres each approximately, or is
Approximately, yeah.
that correct?
5 point something,
But
just under.
just under 6. And they'll be split kind of in half.
One lot will be 2.2087, the other lot will be 3.4341.
And you'll be building on both lots
I'm getting ready probably to sell them, but
or buildable lots.
2 buildable lots, yes.
Okay.
They're both well over 2 acres.
Okay. Can people online hear? Dave, were you able to hear what he had to say?
Yes, I heard him.
Okay, thank you. All right. Um,
You got a draft of this? I got one here. That's pretty,
was it that last, the drawing that he was picking up? Is that last thing that was in our folder?
I don't think I had scanned that because it came in after I scanned and put the documents.
Oh,
into
it's
the
in there?
folder.
Okay. All right. Well, does everyone understand what he's talking about? So essentially, we're taking, is that it? Up here. No, that's not it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So we're taking you're zoning a 6-acre parcel that you will split into 2 lots of what you described of 2 point whatever acres. Any other questions? Not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Fleming,
I'll second.
second by Carol. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, you're approved. Thank you. All right, item G, Hendricks Ronholt petition.
The current parcel is a quarter, which is basically about 40 acres. And what they want to do is split the parcel that has the residence, be close to 30 acres, and then the southern 10 acres be split off. Both lots be less than 35 acres, therefore it's got, are going to be a residential, both lots.
And but there's only buildings on one currently.
Correct.
Correct.
Proposed. Well, I mean, there is, but the proposed lot has one building or house on it already.
All right. Does anyone have any questions on this petition? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve. There's no questions.
So moved.
Motion by Turk,
Second.
second by Fleming. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, you have your approval. Thank you. All right, uh-oh, here's another one. Shivia? Is that how you? Shavaya. Shavaya petition. All right. What's the scoop on this one?
And for Shavaya is
Right. Pull towards you.
My name is Tom Gavin. I'm from Bruce Weber. I'm representing my seller, Stephanie Shavaya, who's on her way back from Pennsylvania.
this land has been currently split off from a larger chunk and it's been split up several different times. And it's up for sale. We want to bring it to conformity with zoning. Therefore, that's why it's being zoned to ag residential.
And the egg, just for my own informational purposes, when you say egg residential, that just means that it's a house out in the country versus in a municipality, or how?
Ag residential has acreage of 5 acres to 34.99 acres. And then they're allowed to have animal units on it.
Oh, so if it's less than 5 acres, that's when we get into just straight residential.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. I don't know why I haven't asked that question before. Okay, so this one is already exists and we're just getting it into conformity is essentially what you just said, correct?
Correct.
Does anyone have any questions? on this one? I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Fleming, second by McGuire. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, you have the approval. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Whew. Got through all those, not too bad. All right, that brings us to item number 8, resolution approving, wait, is FSA person here? They're not online? Not online? Not online either, okay. You're here, okay, so why don't we go ahead and, so I did ask Supervisor Carroll, asked if we would be interested in hearing from someone who has some experience and knowledge on a dark skies initiative in our area. And so thought that would be a timely discussion that we could have. Plus, I always feel like this is something we could keep in mind as we move through our zoning ordinances and how we move forward with our land use. So with that being said, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. If you want to come and introduce yourself, and then I'll have them bring up your presentation on the screen.
I'm Scott Lind, resident just south of Ontario. And a group of us are working on getting the Kickapoo Valley Dark Sky Park established, which would be Wildcat Mountain State Park, Kickapoo Valley Reserve, and some land owned by the Mississippi Valley Conservancy called Tunnelville Cliffs. So we're in the process of getting that designated. As part of the application process, we're doing community outreach to try and do things like this, to educate people what dark sky is. And so that's why I'm here today. So I appreciate your time.
Make sure you stay close to the mic.
Okay.
I know you hate to hear your own voice, like me too, but talk loud.
So I appreciate your time. So the general topic of dark sky really came up from astronomers that had difficulty seeing stars due to light pollution. So you want to go to the next slide there in that presentation. And really, from my perspective, that's an issue. Seeing the stars is an issue, but any of you that now drive around the countryside after the advent of LED fixtures especially have probably seen fixtures that glare at you when you're driving down the road. And that's really a relatively new consequence because of LED lighting and how bright it is.
Which it's more energy efficient. So from that perspective, it's good, but it's very bright.
It's very bright. And the thing about LED fixtures is they're available in a number of different colors. The technical term is color temperature, from as low as 2,700 degrees Kelvin, which is quite warm, quite yellow, what you're used to maybe, up to 5,000 degrees Kelvin, which is very, very blue. And the bluer it is, the more glare you get. So when LED fixtures were first available, the efficiencies of the blue colors were much, much higher than the warmer colors were. So the natural tendency was to use the higher color temperature, the bluer colors. Over the years, that efficiency advantage has decreased. So you can get very, very efficient fixtures now that are a warmer color, 2,700 or 3,000 degree Kelvin. And the advantage of that is you don't get as much glare and you get less sky glow. So from the dark sky perspective, if you use a warmer color temperature, which is 3,000 Kelvin is a practical number to use, you get much less sky glow. You can go to the next slide if you would. So one of the obvious issues with outdoor lighting at night is if you have it on your property, it's typically facing away from your property onto your neighbor's property. And so that's what the term light trespass means. And, street lighting in general is getting better and better in terms of shielding of the fixtures. That's another slide I'll show you in a minute. But, color temperature is one factor. Just the absolute amount of light is another factor, which has been made worse from the standpoint of LED fixtures because we all know LEDs are much more efficient. But the tendency then is to use more light because it costs you so much less to operate. And I've heard people say, I want as much light as I can get. And I can understand that mindset, but I'll explain in a minute why that's not necessarily an advantage. So light trespass is a problem. You can go to the next one if you would. So one of the solutions, and it's a relatively easy solution, is to purchase fixtures that are, we call them full cutoff or fully shielded. So all the light is down, no light goes up. And the only way you can achieve that is to make sure that the lens on that fixture is not visible except from directly below. So if you see a light fixture that has a lens, you can see the lens from the front. That's not a fully shielded or fully cut off fixture. The nice thing about LED fixtures is that when you have a flat lens, that lens is really the light source right at the bottom of the fixture, as opposed to the old style where the lamp was up inside. because of that, you can aim that light, stay below 90 degrees, but you can aim that light a long ways away and still light the ground the way you want to. So you don't have to have a fixture with a lens in the front. You can have a fully cut off fixture and still direct that light where you want it to go. So you can just see an example of the bottom left picture without the shields and the bottom right picture with the shields, what looks like above those fixtures. To the left, you can see the top of the building is lit up, which is not really what you're looking to do anyway. And you can see how the performance is down below. You can move on if you would. So one of the things about more light is perception that you can see better if you're trying to do this for security, for example. And the problem demonstrated in the top is that glare factor. That's one part of it. And the other factor is the contrast. And so, part of being able to see well is not having a huge contrast between the background and the light source. If you want to put a really, really bright light source and the background is dark, it blinds you to what's behind the light fixture. So the idea here is just to show you that putting more light is not necessarily the best solution. Go ahead again. And you can keep moving. We'll talk about energy a little bit. So this is a slide from the International Dark Sky Association. But the general idea is that, if you use more light, you're going to use more energy. And we all know LEDs are most of us know LEDs are more efficient, but there's an additional efficiency gain to be used by not overlighting with LEDs. Keep the light what you need, you'll save even more energy. You can go ahead again. And you can keep moving again. So this is a very, very simplified list. If you go to the International Dark Sky Association's website, they have a very detailed resources to use, but I'm trying to distill this down to the basics. And that is always choose fully shielded fixtures, also known as full cutoff fixtures. Use the warmer LED color temperatures of 2700 or 3000. And in 2700 is more ideal, but from a practical standpoint, it's much easier to find 3000. So if you just remember 3000, that's a good number to remember. A lot of these products now are available with dimming ballasts in them, dimming drivers in them. And so if you can find one that's capable of being dimmed, even if you don't dim it right away, because once you put it up, you may find, oh, I don't need that much light. If it's dimmable, you can add a dimmer later. So again, consider using dimming, using motion sensors to shut them off when they're not needed. That'll save you even more energy. Like I said earlier, don't overlight just because it isn't costing you as much, right? That's kind of false economy. And then only put the light where you need it and as much as you need. That's the basic tenets. You can go one more slide. I think there's two more here. So this last two slides show you what bad lighting looks like from a dark sky perspective. And for most of us in this room, the biggest consideration for you is going to be wall-mounted lights. Because a lot of the street lights now are going to be dark sky, at least in terms of being full cutoff. But a lot of us have wall-mounted lights in our house. So don't get one on the left or the far right. If you go to the next slide, the last slide, they don't have to be this style, but you can see that the light is fully shielded on the left one. The right one's a little harder to see, but if you look at that closely, they make fixtures now that are LED. The light source is way at the top of that, and therefore you don't really see the lamp at all. By doing that, you're not going to have any uplight at all. It'll only be directed downward. That's what I have for a presentation. If you have time and want a lot of questions, I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
Does anyone else I was going to ask, but I'll start. So, one of the things that I see, because I live out in the country, and one of the things that, and we have the same thing, is a lot of yard lights that are just on all night long. And as I'm thinking about our role as the county and what role we could potentially play, I think probably our biggest role we could play is education and offering educational materials. And so I may ask you for, I realize it sounds like the International Dark Sky Association would be a great place to refer people to. But also maybe local electricians and people who are well-versed in this too might be a good place to start with a list of, electricians that are used to installing these kind of lights. Because our yard light, I don't even know how I'd go about it. I think I'd have to call because it's on the electrical pole. So I think I can't mess with that. We have to call some professional somewhere. to take, you know, that kind of thing. So you know, as I was thinking about what our role could be, that was really first in my mind, was that we could offer educational and resources to refer people to.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy. I just retired last December. I'm a licensed engineer and a licensed master electrician, and I've offered my services for free
Oh my gosh.
to advise anybody who wants advice. So I'm happy to meet with anybody who wants to meet with me and come out and look at your property, what the fixtures are, and give you suggestions on what could be done.
Yeah, I have to say from a security standpoint, I like, if I'm up in the middle of the night, I do like to be able to look out and make sure no one's out there.
Right.
So that, you know, that would take getting used to after living 30 years in the country. I do like being able to see what, you know, what's out there, but I also understand that we could do that with a better fixture and still be able to see.
Exactly. That's exactly the
Yeah.
point. Probably with lower light levels and a better fixture that would be fully dark sky. So it is possible to have both.
Because it's my understanding that this light pollution is really affecting our bird, nocturnal and bats populations.
Yeah.
Is there data that supports that, or is that
There is scientific data that supports that.
that it's affecting?
Yeah, I don't go there in most cases because it really is a practical problem. But there are a lot of other things that are causing a lot of other problems caused by having too much light at night, and a lot of these are not only affecting animals but also humans. Right. So we don't see it here in a rural area necessarily, but if you're in a residential area or in a city, a lot of the light pollution is causing impacts on humans as well. So
How we sleep?
right?
Yeah, that's,
So
yeah.
but yeah, there definitely are impacts to insects, to birds, even to mammals. So
Does any other committee member have any questions? Mr. McGuire?
I may not have heard what
You speak into the mic so they can hear you.
I may have not have heard clearly when we went into this. Now we discussed the Gotham lighting problem at the
So-
Tuesday meeting. And I see under number 11 here, is this an action item or is this?
Sorry. So this isn't just information only. I mean, we may want to use this information to inform some of our discussion, but I don't think that that's going to be at the heart of what we need to discuss on the Gotham lighting issue. I really wanted to bring him here to help us gain a better understanding of what the issues are with lights. And like you said, you know, light trespass probably plays somewhat of a role within the issue we're going to discuss in Gotham, but I'm not sure that that's going to be at the heart of what we need to discuss today with that.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming. If we want to have further in-depth discussions about this, would you be willing to come back and?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's part of the application process for us, and beyond the application process, that's what I plan to do a lot of for the next few years. I'm available, educating anytime you know.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that was item number 15. There it is, number 15. So now, do we have no? Okay. So let's go back up to item number 8, resolution approving the Hub Rock contract. Is it? Hold towards you.
But it is.
Is it dead?
I don't know.
There it goes.
This resolution, yeah, we've been working, my department's been working with the Hub Rock Sanitary District to help them they're supposed to reduce their phosphorus loads at their site or contract with landowners to put in practices. So we've been working with a particular landowner, Engine Creek LLC, Engine Creek Farming LLC, and working with Davy Engineering and the Hub Rock District. My former staff went out there and they designed a whole bunch of rock riprap to keep the stream bank from eroding. And there was a contract written up. Then Southwick looked at the contract, approved the contract, and I thought I had taken it to county board. The project's ready to go forward.
So we need this resolution in order to officially be ready to go.
Yes.
So just for the other committee members who maybe aren't familiar, so there are times when different sanitary entities, so for example, the Richland Center Sanitation Department, there are times when, so they're required to how do they put it? They're required to reduce the amount of phosphorus leaving their plants. And so one place in our area that a lot of times it's sitting there and it's easy to, is in the stream banks themselves. So you go out and you sample the stream banks and see where there's more phosphorus. And if you prevent the stream banks from eroding into the stream, reducing the amount of phosphorus. So essentially the sanitary districts aren't able to reduce what the phosphorus they're necessarily putting out anymore. And so they will fix these stream banks so that it's a trade-off, so that they're paying for the stream banks to get improved so that that phosphorus doesn't get in, so that it equalizes out to what the phosphorus they're putting in. And so what's going to happen is project's bid out, we've got to approve that project, or the contractor, and then the Hub Rock district will give us that money. They've borrowed the money for it. It has to go, for some reason, they want it to go through the county well, because your department is doing the engineering and and so this money will come to, they'll give the money to us and we will pay the contract. But this is kind of cleaning up something I goofed up on, which was, they said Ben approved it, and I thought I took it to county board, but with everything going on, I kind of, okay. All right, there's no county funds involved. So essentially they're going to be rip-wrapping a stream bank to prevent phosphorus with the rock hub. It's just below, it's on the Pine River, just below Hub City, Yuba. Okay. Do you have a question, Supervisor Carroll?
Yeah, again, I'm still new to this committee, and I'm just wondering how the rip wrapping and bank protection. In other words, how do you confirm afterwards that you've actually reduced phosphorus? How is data collected, and what if it didn't reduce it as much as this Hub City wanted it to? What happens then?
They went through and several of the banks that were eroding, they went out and took soil samples and sent those samples in and said how much phosphorus is in there. And then basically, when you do the taping and rocking of the bank, there is no erosion. So now whatever was in that bank is no longer going into the stream. That's how.
And RipRap has, I mean, they probably have, like NRCS or somebody probably has data about once you riprap, how much less or is what erosion. Do they also seal it? Do they put some kind of?
No, but it's just big rocks, and there's no erosion off of it.
They did a section by my house on Knapp Creek, and which used to, I mean, it was constantly a bank that was falling in, and they did the riprap 2 years ago, and the bank has not changed at all since they did the riprapping. It looks exactly how it did when they put it in. It looks really good.
And a lot of times they put in some fill over top, and
and seed it down.
And it's seeded down, so you don't even know it's there.
All right, thanks.
There's years of data that, I'm sorry, I think there's years of data that they've looked at. Once you riprap, what you can expect for results. As long as it's done, engineered properly and done properly, there are definite ways that you have to do it in order for it to be successful. And that's where the engineering people come in. Right? Yeah. Okay. Did you have a question?
Yes. Then do they retest at some point to like his other point of his question?
No, because you can't
get to the soil anymore because it's all sealed in.
Okay.
We could bring pictures next time. That might help you understand.
Yeah, I get that, but at the end of the day, it's the phosphorus in the water itself that you're trying to reduce. And the
No. It's more phosphorus getting added to the water that you're trying to reduce.
Right.
Right, but
test the water.
The only way you know how much is getting it, there's phosphorus in the dirt that's eroding in, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure there's less phosphorus in the water. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, nobody tests the water. I mean, some testing of water is done on some of our streams, but the county does not do any of the testing. I think we wanted to a long time ago, but it costs money. There's no state funding to do water testing. Does the DNR does test some of our waters, which we'll talk about a little bit in our land and water plan.
Yeah, DNR has some sites that have done monitoring.
How often do they evaluate the critical waters?
I don't know.
List.
Nobody's ever said.
So there are lists that the DNR does. I know they do randomly measure those kinds of things. That's how things get in the critical waters list. But we as a county what we do is go off of calculations that are based on data collected previously. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So I would entertain a motion to approve this resolution to send on to the county board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Carol, second by Fleming. Any other discussion on this resolution? Mr. McGuire? I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
And I'll get that to Mr. Wendell when.
I've already read through it. Good to go.
Okay.
All right. Okay, that brings us to reappropriation of Mill Creek Fund 75 money. So this money, this is the $100,000 that we got from the borrowed funds 3 years, 2.5 years ago, that we had intended, well, it was set aside for dam improvements. And last year we realized we were only going to spend how many thousand?
Oh, it does close to between 6 and 7.
Yeah, around $7,000 for dams. So we considered the idea of installing some dry dams on properties within the county to help alleviate the pressure on the dams that we are maintaining as a county. And with the staff changeover and things falling where they have, it doesn't look like we're going, and we have to spend the money by next March. So at this point, it seems feasible that what we should do is spend the money that we need on the $7,000 that we're going to need to do to repair the current dams we have, and then we should return that money to the county to use as the county administrator sees fit with the finance committee. So is everything complete on the dams?
Not quite. We've got that first part, the Robson Dam repair, we've got the pipe. I've got to work with not Ash Creek, Advanced Well to abandon that well, and then we're going to need to rent a mini excavator to put that pipe in, the inlet pipe we have to repair.
So do you have accurate estimates? Because I think we should return what we can sooner rather than later, so it can
That's
be
why I said
reappropriated.
if you look on there, I would say if we return 93,000, we should be okay.
You're sure?
Yes, because I figured in a little extra on the mini excavator.
Okay, so those you estimated.
Correct.
Okay.
The only thing we don't have what's exactly going to be the cost of is the mini excavator and the well abandonment.
Okay.
So
Supervisor Carroll?
So there's no action to be taken at this point? What?
Yes, we need to take action to say that we as a committee feel we should return $93,000.
Just not in the
It
form
should
of
be
a resolution?
reappropriated and the county administrator and finance can figure out where it is most needed. I mean, there's plenty of other places where it's critically needed. So it'd be nice to do what we
And
set
for a
up.
little background, I didn't know that nobody came to me and said, well, how much money do you need? It was put in to have $100,000 and I had no projects lined up. So it was.
She's talking about when the borrowed money was set aside. The department head was not asked how much.
I move we return the money.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Fleming. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so make sure you let Administrator Langrick know, and then I don't know if he's going to finance with it or whatever. All right, so then item number 10 is threshold on project approval. So this came up last month when our rules say the rules of the board say one thing about how much money land conservation can approve without going to the full board. And what was the other document? There was 2 documents.
I'm not sure.
It was a
but-
policy document of some kind, wasn't
Was
it,
it
Madam Chair?
policy? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
What it was when we first, before any of this happened, land conservation was authorized to sign contracts with landowners
with the
through
cost sharing,
cost sharing
Right.
for up to $30,000. And that's the last
and that's always been, so if
That's
we
always
just approve it at 30,000, you should be able to function and do.
right.
So I think what we're looking for today would be, probably a motion to send to finance, or not to finance, to Rules and Strategic Planning Committee, the recommendation that they adopt a $30,000 limit and make all appropriate changes to policy at where it's needed. Does that seem to make sense to everyone? Supervisor Carroll?
Yeah, it makes sense. I was just looking for documents or something.
So it came up last time, and I forgot about getting them even in here this
Okay.
time. It was, so in our rules of the board, I think it's Rule 14 that talks about limitations of what departments can and can't do without approval as far as spending money. And in there it said 30,000, I believe. And then there was a policy document, I don't remember where the policy document was, that said 50,000. So there was just a contradiction in the amount of money that the land conservation department is allowed to enter into contracts with, without getting full board approval.
And then it's always been just landowner contracts with cost sharing.
Cost sharing.
Right. I'm just saying that, so at the end of the day, we need to change the wording in that policy wherever it's at.
Correct. And that was what I just tried to get at with,
I move we do that.
okay. Did you get that, what I said? The good thing about having it on WebEx is you can also go back and read it, and yeah. All right. All right, I have a motion from Carol. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Fleming. Any other questions or discussion on that item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. All right. Item number 11. So, I'm going to, I guess I'll briefly, or unless you want to briefly describe. I mean, all of the documents are in your packet. So essentially, we have gotten a letter from someone who lives in Gotham who has asked us to look at a light situation at Greg's Auto World on the corner there and the storage units. And so I think that as I've been reading everything and looking at everything, I really think that our first role is we should, and I will ask Attorney Wendell to tell me if this is correct, but it seems to me that our first job is to look at the conditional use permit information of what was approved by the previous zoning committee to decide and define the language that is in there. So I'm going to read the language from there's 3 conditional use permits, which I just have to get to them. What's it under in here? Where are the
42, 43, 45, and 48.
Yeah. I was looking for where we had written out the conditional use permits where you had highlighted, and I've certainly read them in here.
I think it's all the way
Next page.
I'm sorry, what?
beyond all the photos, so it'd be.
On 10, is it under 10A? Because it wasn't coming up. All I'm getting is photos and drawings, but hold on. Oh, past minutes. I found it. Never mind. Okay, sorry. All right, so the first conditional use permit was for when he was asking to have a car dealership. And so I am, yes. So if you scroll to the next page of that, and you will see there that it says no new exterior light fixtures, but that was specifically talking about his light or his car dealership. If you go to the next hearing, you see that in 2005, there was a petition to place rental storage units behind there. and it was for one building. And if you scroll down, right, so item number 2, it says outdoor lighting shall be provided on the outside of the building. And then, and now I'm going to come back to this, but let's just quickly look at the language from when the second building went up. The language said, outside lights to be installed on both buildings by August 1st. So I think the question, and Mr. Wendell, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the question not for us to determine how we define how do we define outdoor lighting shall be provided on the outside of the building? My understanding is that is it Shep? Is that how you say his last name? Mr. Shep has said that that light is on that pole shining on the storage units because of the conditions of his CUP approval. And that's a conditional use permit that we're reviewing here. So, Mr. Wendell, does that seem like the place for us to start? Do we need to decide how, or how do we decide? Are we the body that should decide how we are going to interpret item number 2? I mean, I think the second one is actually pretty clear. It says it's supposed to be on the outside. Outside lights to be installed on both buildings. So that one, the second building, it sounds to me like what we said is we want lights on the building itself, not on a pole shining across both of them. But the first one just says outdoor lighting shall be provided on the outside of the building. Now, so I'll just give you, last night, my husband had no idea what I was talking about. I just looked at him and I said, how would you interpret this sentence? Outside lighting shall be provided on the outside of the building. He said that it would be on the building, but outside, not on the inside of the building, but on the outside. Do you have thoughts?
So I do believe this body is the correct one to interpret the conditional use permits. I do think that you're right in that this second one specifically it needs to be better defined and clarified. There's a hierarchy of the canons of statutory interpretation. I agree with your husband that if you were to read it as outdoor lighting shall be provided on the outside of the building, if I'm being super lawyerly and pedantic, I can say, well, there's light on the outside of the building, so I'm still in compliance. But that makes the second clause of the sentence redundant, and we try to avoid any interpretation which leads to redundancy. However, the committee is the decider, so I think also the third one is unequivocal.
Right. I mean, I feel like the second one, there's no question that they're talking that the lights are supposed to be mounted on the building, not on a pole looking at the building. Where it says outside lights to be installed on both buildings by August 1st. Right? And that was for the second building?
One of us has the second storage building.
The second storage building. Yeah. He had one built first, and then a year later he built the second one. So, Mr. Carroll, go ahead.
Okay, so whether we interpret this to mean, oh, it's got to be on the building, or, oh, it's okay to be on the pole, you could still have light trespass. There could still be an issue. Would not.
Absolutely, but I think that's a secondary issue. That's the next issue. I think we need to deal with this one first.
Okay.
And then we should talk about whether we as a committee can dictate the kind of lighting they have on their building. And that's something that's probably a little bigger of an issue that we need to have more discussions about. However, I do feel like if they did put a light on the building, the property is 1,000 feet away, but the current, because it's up on a pole, it's shining a really long way. And I'm not sure how a light on a building would be able to do the same thing because it's much lower. So it may solve the problem, but it may not. But I think that's a bigger issue that we need to maybe keep separate from this first part.
Right. But in terms of us deciding, and maybe it turning into something more general or policy, if it wasn't for this problem with the glare, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care if it was on the building or on a pole next to the building, as long as it was providing area lighting. To me, the question still comes back to affecting others.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I thought about is like, well, what if we just asked them to put a shielded light? But I'm afraid that pole is too far away. And maybe you can, because you said you have seen where the light is in this, what we're talking about. My question is that I'm afraid if we put a shielded light there, that it won't reach all of the storage units, which I understand from, if I had a storage unit there, I wouldn't want to go there at night and feel like I'm in the dark where I could be murdered and thrown in my storage shed. So, I want them to have the security that they're looking for. So can you talk to that particular question? If they put a shielded light on that light pole, which is not right next to the building, it's.
Yeah, so just for the benefit of those online, I guess this is Scott Lind again, responding to the question. There are a wide variety of fixtures available with, different patterns of light distribution, and how far that light will travel will depend on how high it's mounted. So I can't tell you that it's not possible. Having looked at that pole, it's quite a distance away from the buildings, but there are optics. The pattern of light that comes off LED fixtures now is pretty astounding. How far you can throw light horizontally and still keep it as a shielded fixture. So it's one of these things where, as an engineer, the lighting designer, you'd look at the situation and try and pick a fixture that would accomplish that if your goal was to keep it on the pole. I won't say that it's impossible. I think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, from a security standpoint, it seems like having lights on the building also would fix the problem of security concerns, but you'd have to have multiple lights. And then is that going to be more lighting up that entire area? And is that worse than trying to fix the one light that's on the pole? Which is why I do think we need to address this. How do we want to define outdoor lighting before we start getting into us telling them what they can and can't do?
What is the main complaint here? The lights are too bright.
They're shining right into the backyard.
Or he's in violation of a contractual installation.
Well, that's one of the questions we have to answer is by putting this light on the pole, has he met the criteria we set forth in the conditional use permits? The second item is that, yes, it is in fact shining into a backyard of a house that's 1,000 feet away. So it's a long ways away. So that light is pointed at a direction and it's so bright that it is capable of shining into a yard that's 1,000 feet away.
We have a two-tier complaint here, right?
I mean, the complaint is essentially the light is shining into their backyard and they're far away.
Through trees.
Through trees. And it's still shining into their backyard.
Is this body being asked to make some sort of a decision on this?
We have been made aware of this situation and they've asked us if there's anything we can do about it. That's that essentially. I think that summarizes it fairly close.
So I'll take over a little bit more. John, if you can roll back up to the pictures a little bit more. Let's see them working or not. To kind of go through this a little bit more. I took some pictures and to give you an idea. I keep on going. I go up. Trying to give you a little bit more history is that there's one that was taken, or one, this is the first unit, and here's the second unit that came along. And then you scroll up, you can kind of see there's your two units, there's the third one. Noticing kind of in this area here, you can see a tree here. And this is, I think, 2010. But scroll up to the next one. You can see it keeps on building more and more buildings, but here's your original two. And this is 2000. This is 2020 right here. You can see that this is when the pole was in. So that pole that the light is actually on was not there in 2005 or 2006. So I don't know how. Question that we're kind of coming into this is the pole that was the light is on as you scroll up more was not there back in 2005 or 2006.
Which home is being affected?
So here's the pole, and when we get to the pictures, I'll show you the light kind of shines this way. The house in question is right down here. But as you can see, here's the pole. Here's JJ over here, facing towards the buildings a little bit. Kind of reference the power box you can kind of see on there. The only thing I was note here too is you can see the light of the pole. If you scroll up a little bit farther, there's a light that is actually on the building, like a motion detector light. So then the other question I also asked Window 2 is defining a light. If it's a motion detector light, does that meet the criteria of the conditional use? This is why it's coming kind of to the body, is that the person that's complaining is saying that the light is supposed to be on the buildings, not on the pole. One of the things I'm throwing into the criteria is these poles here, as you can see, that one, this one, this one, this one, and all these poles here were not there in 2013. So if you scroll up more, right there, you can kind of see the light that's on the covering the Wick building sign. You scroll up more, there's the pole that's in the 2020 photo. Scroll up a little bit more. It's not there in the 2015 photo at all. That's the true there. Go a little bit farther. And here's a road from 2013 aerial or the Google Maps. This is 2013. There is no telephone poles there. So the chicken and egg question, what came first?
So they must have had light on those storage sheds to meet the criteria of the CUP before they put this light on the pole. This is just additional lighting.
Correct.
So I guess, I mean,
this is the reason why I'm bringing it to the committee to
Right.
figure out, is it really conditioned on the conditional use, or is it actually civil matter between neighbors?
so I will give my opinion on that question. I think we need to do a better job of defining what outdoor lighting shall be provided on the outside of the building means. I think that that's in our best interest. And then once we define that, if he meets it or doesn't meet it, then if he meets it, then then it does become we could provide him with information on fixtures he could use that would alleviate neighbor tension. But if we decide that, if we define this and it turns out he is not in compliance with the CUP, then we could make him change the light fixtures. So, Mr. McGuire? Make sure.
Sorry.
Yep.
The question is, so the village of Gotham has, this sounds like it was an issue for the municipal group that head of the village of Gotham and not the Richland County. So is there, where is the zoning verbiage on this, and what's being violated here?
So-
Some rule of the county or rule of the
Right,
village?
so the county issued him a conditional use permit in order to put those buildings up. So they must not have their own zoning in Gotham, their
Well-
county zone.
Gotham is unincorporated. It's not a village, so it's just part of.
It's a county
level
zoned,
stuff.
yeah. So they're county zoned, and therefore it fell under the purview of our county zoning department.
Okay.
And we issued them a conditional use permit to put the buildings up, in which we stipulated that they needed to have light. The question at hand, I think, today is, I don't think we did a good job of defining what kind of light they're required to have. And so I think this body should, and I'm not saying we should take action today necessarily. I think I wanted to be able to have the information provided and have these discussions, and then we can invite the parties to be present. Are you involved in, no, okay. I didn't know if any of them were present. I don't know the names of these. I mean, I don't know on site who's who. So, so I think that the next step for us, after our discussions here today, I feel like the next step for us could potentially be inviting both parties here, or just inviting Greg's Auto World if we're going to be further defining this and what is the process of amending a CUP? Do you notify them? Is there a legal process to changing something that's already in place?
I would have to say that if you're changing an established permit, then you would need to provide the person who received the permit the opportunity to respond to that.
Right. That's, I mean, I'm thinking we need to have an open discussion with them about. So I guess what I would need to know from the committee is, do we feel we need to define this language in this, and it would just be the language in the 2005 CUP, because I think the language in the 2006 CUP is very clear. It says outside lights to be installed on both buildings. That does not say on a pole outside the building. It says on the building.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Supervisor Turk?
is there language in the conditional use permit that forbids additional lighting beyond what we're requiring?
I don't think so. I think the
And
only,
if so, then
statement about lighting would be, yeah, that's true, yeah.
If I may, Madam Chair, to
Yes.
go off of that point. So if that did not exist when both of these conditional use permits were issued, either he was out of compliance for that entire span between putting up the sheds and that pole going up, or he met the terms of the conditional use permit, in which case these are superfluous to the pole.
So then the light
lights.
on the pole becomes just an additional light. And what authority do we have to stop him from putting that light on that pole?
Limited at best.
Is there any other storage units anywhere in the county?
That's a
Just
good
wondering
question.
about how the lighting would be at those. I can't think of any, but I don't.
I know there's some in Blue River and there's some out by past Spring Green.
Yeah, but
14,
just
but
mean,
yeah.
in Richland County.
oh, yeah, there are lots of other different places that have.
In Richland County?
Well, there are some in the city over by the elementary school. There are some out past on 14 West by was it SNS Auto Repair?
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
Now I'm remembering. Supervisor Carroll?
Yeah, well, whether there are any more or not, I think the real question is, because that would just be another example of what someone thought was fine. What we don't have is any kind of a building code or a zoning ordinance defining the kind of light we want for any kind of infrastructure or facility. And I'm not saying we need it. I'm just saying that's where the solution would be, to define it well
wanted
enough
to ask people,
beforehand.
especially when you live where your light on your property affects your neighbors, do we want to get involved in writing any kind of language about recommendations we would make or requirements we would make about what kind of light fixtures are okay and not okay?
I think we should at least discuss it.
Yeah, further. Were you going to say something?
Madam Chair,
Oh, go ahead, Supervisor.
perhaps a discussion of a term we heard earlier in a presentation, light trespass as an issue, as something we may need to address, whether it's a car lot or whatever type of property.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this was a good place to start. I guess my question is at what point would the committee like to hear from, what would you like to hear from now? Would you like to hear from the concerned parties at this point, or would we rather have further discussions about, I mean, I could do a little bit of research and maybe Mike could help too, and just like, are other counties doing anything about light trespass or concerns about neighbors' lights, or any kind of dark sky initiative types of things? We could start there. Or do we want to talk to the parties in question now? And I mean, it's possible we could just offer some information to Greg's Auto World about shielding that light slightly, or using a better light source, and just
Perhaps
ask
connect
how
him
they
with
do
our
it.
gentleman that spoke to us earlier.
Right. We could start with that conversation, and then we could continue as a committee and work towards whether we think we want to make any official kind of ordinance addressing these issues.
And I'm sure I think that makes sense in view of council's interpretation that if we were looking at enforcement options, we are limited at best.
Okay, so have the parties come next time, and we will offer them, well, hear what they have to say. And then we could offer some suggestions, and then after that, we will move into what we as a county want to do or not do through ordinances. Okay.
Probably this for clarification. Can we tell Mr. Shep to say, take down the light? And do we have the right to say that to him?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of a statute that would allow that unless the light were reasonably understood to be a nuisance. That might have some bite to it, but I mean, that's a infringement on a property right. You're telling someone what they can and can't do on their own property. Additionally, the pole is owned by Alliant, correct?
I believe so.
Yes.
If you scroll back up to the picture, I mean, you can see it's the direct power line.
And are individuals allowed to just stick a light on a?
That's what I don't know. I don't know if he requested that of Alliant.
Alliant.
Light is actually Alliance, in which case that would be an entirely
Totally
separate
different
party.
thing, yeah. So that seems like a reason, it seems like our next step, really, we need to bring them here and talk to him. Because if that light is the only light and was the only light that ever was on the building, then he was in violation for 15 years or 13 years or whatever. But I'm assuming he's gonna tell us that he had light on there, but he decided he needed better lighting, probably so that security cameras could see better or something. And so we put that light up, thinking he was doing something good, and
But didn't those pictures document there were pictures or lights on the side of the buildings?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it?
I mean, we
some of your
think we saw lights,
Some of your
right?
pictures showed that there were lights on there. It
Whether they're
sounds like
fu-
this is
yeah.
just additional.
Additional lighting, which means it actually means that it's not in our purview then, if it's just an additional light that he put up.
I mean, if you can see right here, you can kind of see the one
Mhm.
light right there. That's not really a great photo of it. But I mean, there was a light there, and then just go back up a little bit. So these are the two original buildings, and the ones here, I'm assuming at the other time of the two buildings, the other light would have been right there. So actually, it's probably been covered up by now.
Okay, all right, so our next step, we'll invite the parties to come and talk with us. That will be. All right, so anything further on that discussion?
One last question.
Yeah.
That pole, isn't that a power and light pole, and didn't he need permission?
That's one of the questions, we have. We believe it's an Alliant Energy pole,
It is.
and we don't know if he worked with them or how he installed that. We don't know. So we need to ask him.
It's too simple.
Mhm.
Potentially, yes. Okay. Anything else on that one? All right, moving on. And FSA is still in here? Okay. Okay, then let's move on to update of, excuse me, plat survey project. I did?
And Madam Chair, do you need me here any?
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Am I on the wrong agenda? I had printed out one and it was outdated.
Yeah. Yeah, we got recreational rental tourist
Oh, right.
rooming,
Hold on,
and
let me
then
go
you got
back.
Mill Creek inspections.
Let me go back. Sorry, I was trying not to print it again. So, I'll just cross off what I didn't have and then. 1 second. Oh, okay, item number 11, recreational rental tourist rooming in zoning districts.
So if everyone clicks on the sheet that's there, you can kind of see what it is. I broke it down by zoning districts. And basically how this came about is that there was a request for a recreational rental that was in the R2 district. And one of the things that was brought up also was that in the past, I mean, underneath ag forestry, it's allowed as a conditional use as recreational rental. In the ag residential and the R1 districts, I was told that if it's a similar use, you could use the same use. So that's why I was kind of going with bed and breakfast establishments. Underneath the ag residential, that family farm business, that's just a whole mess of itself. Because basically, when I talk to past corp counsel, basically, as you see the definition of how it reads there at the bottom of the sheet, basically, it's any lawful activity except a farm conducted primarily for any of the following: purchase, sale, lease, or rental of personal or real property. So basically, that means you can do about anything on it. But what basically boils down to is that it wasn't allowed in the R2 as a conditional use. There's no similar use of it either. And sounds like a lot of towns are in favor and they like the recreational rental tourist home. So underneath, you can see the red would be added to the zoning districts underneath conditional use. Underneath ag residential, just perfectly spell it out, recreational rental tourist home. As item V, underneath the R1 as S, and then R2 be E.
So essentially, what you're saying is right now we have conditional use permits that allow for recreational rentals, short-term rentals in the ag.
Ag forestry.
Ag
Like the one
forestry.
today was in the ag
And-
forestry.
Right. And the ag residential or not the ag residential?
Ag residential, you have the bed and breakfast. So
And the family
Passport
farm.
Council said
Okay.
there's a similar use.
So essentially, you just want it, we should add the language for recreational tourist houses to the other types of,
if we're going to do it for one, we should do it for all
For all
of
of
them and
them.
make it clear.
right? Hi, Linda. That's okay. You can watch online. We've had some good discussion so far. No, I mean, later. It's recorded. Yep. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so does anyone have, I suppose, I was gonna say, does anyone have any questions on what he's asking us for here? Does anyone? Essentially, we're just asking to put that we will, under a conditional use permit for these types of zoning, we will allow short-term rentals, recreational rentals. I'm sure this is gonna be cropping up all the time. I mean, I constantly am running into people who are
Right.
turning something into a Airbnb,
Right. And the
VRBO.
one that brought up, someone bought a house down there in Univista, it's zoned R2, and they were going to get the conditional use. And
And you couldn't because it's not allowed currently in the language.
right.
So how do we go about, is this is gonna be ordinance changes?
It will be an ordinance
Is it-
amendment.
One ordinance that covers all of these?
Right.
And are you prepared to do that today or?
Well, just for the recommendation, and then we'll write it up to go to full county board as additions to the zoning ordinance,
Okay, so we would be modifying our current conditional use,
amending it, yeah.
amending our current ordinance that covers conditional use permits
To add these three
to
items.
add, so essentially making all of them consistent, meaning we will allow recreational rentals in any of our zoning.
Pretty much
criteria.
other than commercial and industrial.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, so we're not you're not asking for an action today, we're gonna do that, I'm confused.
What we're asking for is a motion to approve to send to county board
Okay,
the
so
ordinance
our-
amendment
yeah.
for the zoning ordinance.
So we would be amending the zoning ordinance to include recreational rentals on the AR, R1, and R2. So that they're all consistent. We aren't saying we don't want tourist rentals in an R2, which makes sense to me if we're allowing it in one. If we're allowing it in the ag forestry, why wouldn't we allow it in ag residential or R1 or R2?
I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion by Gentis,
I'll second.
second by Fleming. Did you have a question, Mr. Carroll?
Yeah, I guess I'm not that familiar with what that does when there are Airbnbs and rentals for the county and our finances or anything else like that. What does it do?
Does it have a financial impact on the county directly? No, other than bringing tourism dollars to us. However, all zoning, anytime someone wants to open their home as an Airbnb or rent a house as an Airbnb, they have to get a conditional use permit, which we do handle. So a direct, I mean, they also pay a fee to, how much is a CUP, $500?
There's a fee of $500
Yeah.
for conditional use hearing, but then there's also money that goes to the state and then taxes that can be off of room tax.
Right.
That was my question.
So we don't have control. So these houses, if there's a room tax involved, it would go to their township, not to the county. And that's a state. We don't have a say in that. That's the state decides that.
But the townships would.
The townships, if a room tax was created for that township, then they would be the benefactors of that.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, at one time, I thought Marty Richards tried to have a room tax for all rentals for the county. Is that?
He's going township to township.
He's going
My
township.
understanding is he's going township to township because it has to be run through that township. Yeah. And the deal with those dollars is 70% has to be spent on tourism. So tourism advertising, tourism, whatever. And then the other 30% would go to the municipality in which the residence sits. That makes sense? Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. So I would entertain a motion to amend our current ordinance for conditional use permits that adds recreational and tourist homes to the AR, R1, and R2 zoning. Did she? Oh, she did. Okay. Who did? Oh, and you seconded. You're right. All right. Sorry. All right. So any other discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Let's go ahead and amend that. All right. Now I gotta get back to the proper agenda. Okay, so that brings us to Mill Creek Dam inspections? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Good news here, right?
It's good news, actually. There was how many counties? 7 counties. Vernon County wrote the proposal. We agreed with it. Went out for request for proposals to inspect 39 dams in those 7 counties, starting in 2023, going through 2027. I've got 2 things there. The one that's showing now shows what the cost is going to be for Richland County as a part of it. And this is what the lowest bidder was Davy Engineering. And 5 inspections, so there'll be 2 in 2024, 1 in 2025, 2 in 2026. So they're averaging 1,040. Originally, when we originally started talking, I think it was Iowa County said they spent $6,000. So when I gave the information to Clinton saying that what we'd be needing in those few years was a lot more. So the only thing that might change on the price is their mileage. They're basing it off of, they're not La Crosse. They're basing it on IRS rates. So if the IRS rate changes,
The mileage will go up slightly.
will go up slightly.
So just a reminder to everyone, so the county is responsible for 8 dams on Mill Creek that we are required by law to also have inspected. And the cost used to be covered by NRCS?
Natural Resources.
NRCS, and they are no longer going to be covering that cost. And so we are going to have to come up with it ourselves. And Kathy has done a great job working with the other counties to try and make this more efficient by getting one company to do all of the dams in the area. That way, saving that company time and energy. And so this is good news because we were really worried it was going to be $6,000 a dam, and
Which really, yeah, that was.
and so at $1,000, I mean, it's still a lot, but it's a heck of a lot better than 6. So
Right.
so this is just informational purposes only, correct? We're not actually taking any
Yeah,
action.
I don't think it has.
We're not entering
the
into
total
contracts?
cost well, what's going to happen is Vernon County is going to put together a contract with them, and it's $5,000. Well, it's $5,200. Not sure if I think Clinton still wants to kind of take this to county board. Maybe I'm not sure if we have to or not.
But you'll deal with the administrator.
Right.
Okay.
And we'll have him sign it. But I will have their Vernon County Corp Council is going to work with them, which happens to be somebody who works with Mr. Wendell. But when we get it, I'll give it to him to look at the contract, and then
Okay.
we'll have Clinton do the signature. So
Perfect. So it's good news, at least. Spending less money to do something we don't have a choice about. So, All right, thank you, Kathy. So that brings us to item number 13, update of plat of surveys project.
Last I knew, Clinton was going to sign a contract with MSA, so he might have done that already, and they might be working on a project, but there's all the way to the contract part of it.
Okay, so this is just following up from last month when we approved.
Right.
And it got approved at the board.
I believe you wanted this on the agenda for the next several months, so that's why it's
Okay.
on the agenda.
Okay.
Or we can take it off.
We probably could take it off until they start working on it and then just give us updates as far as how it's going. All right. So that brings us to, well, I was going to skip down. Before we start talking about the land and water resource plan, because that's going to be a big one, we could finish up anything with zoning so that Mike could actually take off if he wanted to. You don't have staff? I don't see any staff. Was anyone going to pop in, Lynn or?
No, I was going to get them one, but they're probably getting ready to leave right now, so.
Do you want them to just come in and say hello before they leave? And then you guys can, and because there's nothing else. Well, actually, no, that's not true. You need to do item number 18. GIS sanitation position. Is there anything to report on? You did send me an email saying that there's about 4 months that Lynn will have for her buyout for vacation after she retires.
Right, so I guess on the item we left off on the last meeting was to look at
Yep.
what would be the buyout cost, because for some reason I was told that we could not fill the position until the buyout's completely paid out, which is $15,000 or basically 15 weeks of work. So you're looking about 4 weeks of no GIS person.
Right.
Because it's not in the budget. But I don't know if that's fact or not because no one can find it in the policy.
So Clinton's reaction was, reaction was it's not in policy anywhere, so that may or may not be something.
Right, no one can find it in policy, so we don't know for sure, but at one time, and if I remember right, one of the lieutenants, when he retired, it couldn't be replaced until the buyout was paid out.
Okay.
So what's normal policy? I'm just following.
So
what
we
was
really
said at
need
one
to,
time.
we need to hear from Administrator Langrick how he is proposing.
Right. At one time, he's mentioned about overlap.
Yes, we talked about
And
that
if
last
we
time.
do overlap, that's also a thing. You had to go to county board to pay same position to two different people. So
Okay. And then you also looked into contracting services for GIS.
correct. I sent you the email
did.
on the numbers, but
Why don't we put that, we could put that on next month's agenda to talk about the potential of, yes.
I think the main point that I think it was Lafayette County that we were talking to, but it sounds like they contracted out and they realized after they started contracting out, it cost a lot more contract out than it did to have an actual
To hire
person.
someone. John, did you guys, someone mentioned to me, I think it was, I don't know if it was Barb or Jason, but they were saying there was another county that had contracted out their GIS and were really happy with it. Do you know who that was?
I am not. I know Sauk has contracted to have some other stuff done.
Okay. So I think what we,
They do have a person that just does.
you might not know talking to him, Mike.
Sauk has 5 or so many GIS people. I mean, it's they're
So
contracting
they have
out
5 people plus they contract out?
Some work, I believe.
Wow. That's a lot. Okay. So obviously this needs more discussion. So I'll make sure, I'll touch base with Clint too, just to see as far as the buyout stuff, and we can have a full discussion. I'll ask him to be at the next meeting because do we have an official date for her? September 7th? For Lynn to retire, yeah. So, and I'll gather all that information with what we find out for contracting the services. I mean, we may have to do that just as a temporary, if we have to wait 4 months for Lynn's vacation to be paid out, we may have to contract. And so then we're going to need to know the cost for that. But then that's costing, so wouldn't it be cheaper to just hire someone to overlap? And so that would be something that's the kind of information I think we would want to be able to, yeah.
That's the reason why I kind of discuss it now
right.
rather than
Okay.
later, but which route to go, but it doesn't make sense to contract out if,
Right, but if we talk about this at the end of July, that should still give us enough time to move forward with it before she leaves, right?
right,
Okay,
be some time
I
to,
think that might need to be a priority for our discussions for next month.
right. The question though then too is pay raise or wage study type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's different numbers because
For the position.
we can't find anyone, then we're going to be stuck contracting out.
Correct. Okay, all right, I'll get that all organized for next time. That all
Madam
makes
Chair?
sense to everybody? Yes, Supervisor
I'm
Turk?
sorry, I have to depart for another work meeting here, so I'll have to jump off.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We still have quorum, just officially, we still have quorum. Okay, we will still have 4, so that will leave us where of the quorum. Yep, we'll be okay. Yep, that's the way it goes. All right, so is that everything for you, Mr. Bindle?
Yes,
Okay, I mean, unless you want to hang out for the land and water plan.
I might for a little bit.
Okay. Do you want to see if they're in the office just to stop in quick and just say hello and introduce themselves? They're gone? Okay. It's 4:31. All right. Okay, so let's get back to the agenda then. How do I keep? Right, that brings us to, well, why don't we, while we're talking personnel, before we get into the land and water, do you want to quick just touch base on where you're at with the conservation technician position?
Like music.
Sorry. Yeah. I met with Clinton last week. We put together a job description, made to the job description. Description is for both. There's an agronomic version, which is the planner, and then there's the technical version part of it. So, and then we put together the ad, and I sent it to the Observer, I sent it to the Shopping News, sent it to Barb, or MIS. It's gonna be posted on the county website. It's gonna send it to Indeed. I'm trying to get into the job center. And I sent it to Wisconsin Land and Water. I sent it to Department of Ag, State Department of Ag, and then I got to get a call into Fox Valley Tech, which they have a degree for. They have a degree program for technician. Perfect. That sounds good. That's a really wide net. Hopefully we'll get they'll go through to the 15th of July. So you'll be interviewing at some point after that. Hopefully sooner rather than later, right? To get that position filled. Okay, good. All right, so that brings us to the Land and Water Resource Plan updates. Okay. How's everybody doing reading that plan?
71 pages and.
It's a lot of information. Yeah. So I think for the most part, what I mean, if you have typo there, I mean, I did find some typos and stuff like that, which we can deal with those offline. We don't need to spend time dealing with that. I'd really like to just, I think today to focus on from the committee, on the goals that were set forth, in this plan. And I don't know about what you guys did, but I kind of was looking at the 2012 plan and this plan and looking at the goals together. Just to kind of, and also that document that I sent you, that the summary that she gave us of what we accomplished from the 2012 plan, I think was also really helpful. So today, I think what I'd like to focus on is really, are there things that you saw in there that you think for some reason shouldn't be in there, which I didn't see anything that I thought shouldn't be in there, but is there anything that you feel is really imperative that was missing? And so I guess what I was going to just start with a couple questions that I had for Kathy that I don't know if anyone else had, but I think it might help inform our discussion. So the first question I had is, and I did actually reach out to someone who's on the Land and Water Conservation Board who's going to be, so just so the committee is all aware, we, and by we, I mean Kathy and I as chair, will be going to the Land and Water Conservation Board in December with this plan, and we have to,
For the 2022
the 2022 plan, and we will have to present it to them and tell them what we plan to do and how we plan to do it. My question was, do you know, Kathy, if when people, because this is a 10-year, so this is the, and is this the first, was the 2012 the first one?
Yeah.
No, there was one.
Before that, on the
2002, 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you did the 2012 plan, was a lot of the content very similar to the 2002 plan? And you just changed up your goals and, you know, like added a little bit here and there, but it was essentially.
No, it was different because some of the natural resource stuff had changed. I was able, because a lot of the water, like the water resource stuff from all the watershed stuff, it was done in 2002, but it wasn't out by the time I did the plan. So I had all that information in, and then I've tweaked it. That part, like I went in and found out which ones are exceptional, outstanding, all that kind of stuff. The basic goals are the same. We've just done some changes.
Yeah, the only thing that I was concerned about is when you're reading it, a lot of the text is identical, which I mean, conservation, the issues we face haven't really changed that much. I mean, we're addressing them and we're making some progress, but they're still there. So in my mind, I was like, okay, it makes sense that some of it would stay the same. I think like the data that's in here, like the 2002 watershed, is there no other, I mean, it's 20 years old, it's 22 years old.
That's what I want to find out some more. I've looked, there's not been a basin plan update.
Since 2002. I mean, that was part of my, I'm like, God, this is really old stuff. And I'm sure, you know, especially when you start talking about the fact that there, you know, the data we have even from the USDA information about how many farms we have, the latest data is 2017. And we know just by driving around, there's a far less farms.
It comes out every 5 years.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's going to come out this year.
They'll come out this year.
Yeah.
And it'll be done, the census is done in 2022, it'll be out in 2023.
Right. So it won't help us inform this plan. But I'm sure our numbers of our crop information is different.
Oh, yeah.
Sure the number of dairy farms we have is, I'm sure, different. So I guess from an overall, like a kind of, you know, high perspective, I just wanted to make sure that do you know if that's what other plans, that they're very similar? I don't want to get criticized that we just regurgitated the same plan.
Well, no, I think what Lisa Trumbull from Department of Ag, that's the person I work with. She basically said the plan we had in 2012 need to be tweaked, but she goes, the basic stuff is there.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
That's what she said.
That's a good thing for us to understand, that it's okay that.
But the things they want to see is stuff about climate change, which I did put information about climate change in here.
Although we don't have any actual goals.
But I don't know what to put for goals. That's my.
Which I think we can probably tweak a little.
Well, no, that's what I mean. I didn't know what to put.
Stuff. Yeah.
But that's yeah. If you can come to me and say, hey, we should add this and that, that's fine. I just not sure. I looked in some of the plans. I don't really see anything. The ones I
People are being very cautious, I think, about
actually
work plan items to add, which I think is, I'd like to be a little bolder than that. I mean, I think if we don't meet a criteria, I mean, there were things in the 2012 plan that we didn't do.
Right.
And maybe we, you know, so,
but I just don't know what we should put it and where it should go.
Right.
Right, but I basically wrote the plan and they approved it back in 2012 and I took it to, so it's.
Oh, really? They didn't bug you like we.
You had some interesting farmers that people should know.
Well, no, what we did was.
Yeah, that's okay.
No.
What talking to your mic though?
Okay.
What we do is, if you look on the, the inside cover, I put together an advisory committee, and we had a woodland owner, we had a dairy and cash grain farmer, we had an organic dairy farmer, we had a beef and cash grain farmer, we had a beef farmer, we had a town chair, we had a citizen, we had a meat producer and I can never say that word, bee person with does bees. I never can say that one.
Beekeeper?
I'll call it beekeeper for lack of better.
Yeah.
We had a member of the Conservation Congress who's a science teacher. And then we had another citizen who's involved in wanting to do a project up on her place for turning stuff to the floodplain.
So I would argue that anything we do to improve our floodplain and anything we do to reduce runoff is addressing climate change. You know,
Yeah, and I just
mean,
don't know how to word it in here. Under
right, which that we can work on that as we work through the plan. So those are my does anyone else have any, like, not specific, but just kind of overarching, what's the one I'm like, high, altitude, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. Again, new to the committee, this first one I've read, but I had a lot of questions and comments that I didn't get organized right now, but I'd like to see if I can get some answers. So are we going to revisit this again later, or how would I do that?
So that's a good question, because it has to go to the DNR in late August.
we wanted to go
in
like
July.
early August.
Early August.
So
We don't meet till August, right?
Well, we were going to talk about that, and now Mike left. But
yeah, because it's from what I've been told from Lisa Trumbull is you send it to DNR and it takes them. So they're supposed to take it in August to them, and the person is takes them a long time to get through it. Let's put it that way. They've had a long return. So if I wait till September, we don't meet.
all right. So
We can still, I can take it to the DNR and then we can still revise it like
before it goes before the full board.
Right,
for
the
approval,
full board,
before-
I'm looking,
and then
full board, I'm looking the end of the meeting in October, the county board meeting in October. So if we need to make changes, we can still do it at the September or October meeting.
So I think what she's saying is we need to send it to the DNR in early August, but our meeting is either going to be August 1st, or I may propose we have it July 27th. Either way, we will have one more meeting before it goes to the DNR. So I think, to answer your question, Steve, I think that the way to move forward would be if you have specific suggestions of things you want to see in the plan, I think we give those to Kathy and we let her work through some of that.
Or, just call up
today,
set up a time, and
even today, we can hit some of those today. If it's, more in-depth questions about trying to understand certain things, I think that would be best to be handled not in the meeting, but just between you individually calling her, or
we could set
setting
up
up a time to
No
do
big
that.
deal.
So with that being said, do you have some specific goals that anyone was looking for that were missing?
I guess for me, the goals themselves, I just wondered why those were the goals. Or there was something about, I don't know, 3 tons of runoff a day or something like that, or soil loss. And my reaction was, well, why isn't it 0? Those are the kind of things I don't understand how the goals were chosen.
That's a good question. I think we can talk about that right now. So if we're starting on page 21 is the goals of the 2022 plan. Do you want to just talk a little bit about how you chose different values within the plan?
Well, tolerable soil loss is what the soil rebuilds itself in a year.
So like from leaves degrading and
crop residue,
right,
that sort of thing. Grass decaying. So anytime you plant anything, even you talk about no-till, anytime you touch the ground, there's going to be some erosion, and it depends on the rain source. So T is what's built up, and it's anywhere between 2 and 5 in this county, depending on the soil.
And these are standards these are industry standards that you're
correct from it's national,
from data that's been collected
over historically. 40, 50 years. So, that's why we want to keep it to the tolerable soil loss limits or less. Because sometimes we're trying to prevent a lot of erosion, like on some of these crop fields where you've seen it, where you see the gullies coming down, the small gullies. That's what we're trying to prevent.
So when you make the statement in here, it says the county average tolerable soil loss limit is 4 tons per year. Is that data that is given to you from
The federal,
the federal government? They're saying that really with your
Right, through the-
topography and your soil,
that's
there
the
should
average.
there should be no more than 4, or there should be
That's just the county average. So like I said, there's some soils,
that stay where they're supposed to and some that,
yeah, there's some that are more susceptible. So that's why when we're doing planning or whatever with the landowner, we want to, you see what the soil type is, and that determines what your soil loss can be at the max. And there's some around the county that are 2 ton per acre. So that's what we do. Some are 5 ton. I mean, that's what we do, but we don't let them go over that amount when we're working with them.
and this data is based on soil samples. So we know what soil types we have.
When they updated this soil survey back in, I don't remember when it was. 99, 2000, 2001, something in there. I don't remember what year exactly off the top of my head now. But the last one we had was in 1939. So they went through and they redid the soils.
Who's they?
It's the, that used to be Soil Conservation Service. Now it's Natural Resources Conservation
NRCS.
Service.
So the assumption is that there is a known rate at which soil rebuilds. And so you're saying, as long as we don't go over that rebuild rate, we can allow some soil loss.
Right.
And I'm saying, maybe that's not good enough.
And I realize that, but that means we will have no farming.
I don't know that I agree with that, but I'm just saying.
No, but I mean, if it has 0 soil loss, it means the ground is not disturbed at all. That means even like no-till farming, pasturing, anything that's what the only way it's not going to erode is if the ground is not disturbed at all. Nothing can be planted in it.
So 0 is unrealistic, but we could shoot for like as close to 0 as possible.
Well,
right, that's what we try to do.
Again, these are averages. So if one was to say, okay, in order to get to 1.5, let's say, then we have to decrease corn by X%, increase pasture by X%, something like that.
What it amounts to is what kind of practices they're putting on. That's it's like if I'm working with you and your soil loss is 2, it may say, well, you can only do no-till, and this is a crop rotation you have to use.
Do we do that?
We can't do it with everybody. We don't have the authority.
That's what I was going to ask is where
There's
does our
authority for
authority?
people in farmland preservation or who have a manure storage permit. I don't have authority to go out to, Melissa Luck's not in any programs. I technically can't go out and tell her of soil loss. She can only have this much.
Well, I think technically you can because of NR 151. However, we don't have a mechanism for enforcing it.
We have no mechanism.
We don't have an ordinance in our town, in our county, instructing the sheriff, instructing the DA. I mean, we don't.
Did it be the DA?
The DA, or would it be Corp Council?
I mean, that's what I meant.
Be
Corp
Corp
council.
Council. Yeah.
Would have to enforce it.
Wait, if you found out that they had more runoff or more soil loss, the DA would enforce that?
Corp Council.
If we had, we'd have to have an ordinance to do it. We don't have.
Even though NR 151 is on the books,
It's on the books,
you
but
still have to have a specific ordinance in your county.
yeah, to enforce those rules.
So
we'd have to go to right now. We'd have to go to DNR and say, hey, you need to enforce it. And right now, they're not doing it.
Because NR 151 is a state level statute. It has to be enforced at the state level, so that's why the DNR enforces it. I think there are other counties though that do then have ordinances. I know that there are counties
there's
where their land
there's-
conservation people actually enforce.
And to give you a little history, when we were doing the manure storage ordinance back in 1999, I had a heck of a time getting that passed at that time. Nobody wanted us to enforce the manure storage ordinance. Didn't think we had the authority to do it. And
when was NR 151 written?
2002.
After that. Because NR 151 really does give pretty sweeping So I don't know about the three of you, but if you want to really learn about what conservation practices the state is standards they're trying to set, NR 151 is the document you should read. The question and issues that we've had as a county has been, how do we go about enforcing? And our current line of thinking is that we would rather, instead of going out and penalizing farmers, we would rather have a amicable working relationship so that the land conservation staff can actually approach these farmers and encourage and give them offers and information on cost sharing and get them to implement practices to make them in compliance without being a penalizing enforcement entity.
And the only proactive rather
Yeah.
than like reactive.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, there's only so much you can do with the carrot, and at some point we may need to and probably should be talking about the stick.
But the thing with the stick is for us to enforce it, unless it's a brand new farm, if it's an existing farm, the only way we can enforce it is we have to offer them a bona fide offer of cost sharing.
Oh, that's true. That language is in NR 151, isn't it?
Oh,
So it's like, and for some of these, like the soil erosion, we would have to come up with a source of money.
Other than our $50,000 we get from the state, or
Well, there has to be, unless it's a constructed practice, if it's a management practice, we have to come up with money that way because there's not management money except
I
for.
forgot. That's right, because the Wisconsin Land and Water Association is talking about the conservationists are actually asking to get rid of that cost sharing requirement and just being able to tell people they have to fix it.
Correct.
And there's a lot of pushback, as you can imagine.
So, I mean, there is a way, but right now we don't have it. And we can have the ordinance, and that's something we can work on the next couple years. But there's the stick there, but the stick has a string
It's
attached.
complicated, yeah.
So,
Okay, so does that answer your question a little bit, Steve? Right?
Just picked soil loss as one example, and I need to understand our enforcement limitations better to know what questions are even worth asking. But I
Right.
will get that together, my questions, just very quickly so that we
Okay.
can deal with them.
And I will just add that I think it's okay for us as the committee to have a little bit of a pie in the sky kind of aspirations.
Yeah.
And then we can talk with Kathy about what the realistic approach is. But I think it's okay for us to push and have some pretty lofty expectations, with the understanding that there's going to be constraints on staffing, time, and things like that. But I don't think it's necessarily bad to, put things in there that we may not be able to attain. But I think we should always be striving to work towards attaining those goals.
we have 2 or 3 year, I don't know, just some in there. I don't have a.
Well, this is a 10-year plan.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a
Right.
lot of time and
Right.
look how much has changed just in the last 5 years.
Yep. So if you let me know before the next meeting, so I could kind of amend this, if you got some things ahead of time, so I could kind of
I'm gonna sit down with you a little.
yeah, so I can do some amendments ahead of time, so I'd have a more up-to-date one for the next meeting.
So I have some specific questions that I just want to ask her for you all to hear. So one of them, so like in the 2012 plan, there was a couple of different places where you guys had a goal of making best management practice lists, and you've completely removed, they didn't get done, and you've completely removed that. Can you tell me, because what I was thinking is like, okay, one of our goals is to educate our landowners, and like with realtors are the first really contact that people have with, and they're going to purchase land. If there was a list of best management practices that included, contact information, couldn't we give that to realtors to give out to people that are buying land, especially land that has tillable on it, that we know they're probably going to go and rent that to whatever Joe Blow farmer wants to do whatever he wants, and they will have no idea whether it's good or bad. So I just was questioning why all of the lists of best management practices were removed. And
Because we didn't do it, that's probably why I did it.
but do you think it's still a good goal? I mean,
It is a good goal. Is
it really hard to make those? Like, is it hard to decide what to put on them, or what?
that's a little
kind
bit of it.
prevents it from happening?
I don't know.
I mean, is it more that other things are like getting our cost sharing dollars spent and doing all of that stuff is just taken priority over?
I think so, but I mean, we can put together a list, it's just trying to figure out what goes with what.
Because one of the things as I was reading this is a lot of the things we want to accomplish really require education of the landowners, and especially not
And that's,
absentee landowners. I think we have a lot of land in this county that is absentee landowner
yes, and that's.
who are
the
then renting out their tillable because they want to make income.
And I'll be honest, over the years, the people we've talked to people about, you shouldn't allow your renters to do that. Like, but they pay my rent. They pay me money, so
They pay my taxes. They pay my property taxes. But
I'm just saying that's the answers we get back from a lot.
right. But on the other hand, it can't. I mean, some of them don't even know. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, it seemed to me that when we had renters on our land here, they had to put forth a plan, even though they were the renters doing it. And it didn't have to just be the owner. I mean, the renter was responsible for putting a plan.
Well, I don't want to say it. If you're in farmland preservation as a
Yes.
landowner, it is your responsibility to work with your renter,
Make sure they comply.
to comply.
Yeah.
If you're not in that program and you have a renter come in and rent it, they have to follow federal regulations, which federal rules say they can go up to 2 times the tillable soil loss limit. So they can actually erode land at a much higher rate
Than what our state, than our local targets are. Okay. Well, I think
I can put it back in. It's no big deal. I just.
yeah. I think. I mean, I just think anytime that any opportunity we can take, because once you've made the list, it's there. You know, it's kind of and then it's just a matter of giving it out. You know, so it seems like it's low. You know, putting a little bit in and getting at least a little more return as far as, you know, I don't know how cooperative realtors would be, but I mean, how hard is it to just hand out this pamphlet saying, hey, you've got agricultural land here, and these are some of your options, and these are some of the things you need to keep in mind for best practices. Does anyone else just think that's a bad idea, or we're okay with kind of, okay.
The hardest part we have is making contact with some of these out of area landowners.
For sure. And I've been kind of racking my brain trying to figure out how can we get access to these absentee landowners. And
All parcel property owner information is in the GIS map. I mean,
it is.
But how do we make that contact? Do we do mass mailings? Do they pay attention to those? Oh, this is somebody else. They throw it in the mail, throw it away.
And what's the most effective way to communicate is probably,
What's the most effective way to communicate?
I mean, we've never tried anything. So
no, we have in the past.
Oh, we have? What have we tried?
We have tried we worked with putting together some meeting. It's been quite a few years, but we did put together, I worked with Extension, we put together a couple of landowner meetings for these people and nobody showed up.
So those are in-person meetings,
For
though,
the
for people who
out
don't
of-
live here.
Excuse me, for the out of state or
On
out of
weekends,
area.
Yeah.
that was before social media, that was before all that.
So we have a
kind of-
lot better ways. Okay. All right. Well, I think there's room for things that we could do that would be fairly low staff intensive that, that might really help us. Mr. Carroll?
just one more for now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in here, but I didn't see it as far as goals, but the percent of farm acreage that is in a plan, is that?
It's 8%. Did you?
It's what?
8% is
8%.
8% have nutrient management plans. I just saw that on the states from 2020 is the most recent data.
That's the data, but what, do we have a goal is my question. For
That's
Richland
so
County.
that's one of the things the nutrient management plans. We've been talking for a while about what are methods we could use to get more landowners doing nutrient management plans, which is usually tied to farmland preservation because you want the tax credit. I don't remember if there was any goals about increasing our participation. I mean, that's a statewide conversation that's been happening with people in Kathy's position. They're frustrated with, it sort of has led to, they did get an increase when farmland preservation tax credits came about. They did get an increase in the number of people participating with nutrient management plans, but it's leveled off and plateaued. And haven't been able
Well,
to.
those are two separate goals, right? One is farmland preservation as a percent of the county, and then any other programs that roll out from that. Is that what I'm
Well,
understanding?
essentially farmland preservation, is the only carrot we have in encouraging people to do best management
Right.
practices on.
And as a goal, I'm saying
Yeah,
that is, we'd like to increase that percent.
I would agree.
Whatever
I
it
mean,
is.
I don't know how we're gonna do that, and we will have to brainstorm ways of doing that.
Yeah.
But that's, maybe that could be the goal, is brainstorm ideas to get it, because I did notice like Sauk County's at crazy high percentage. And we're not unusual. 8% is, and we're not the worst. Juneau County is only 1%. But 8% was, in the lower ones, but I think Crawford County was also something low. I think Vernon was a little higher, Sauk was a lot higher. And I don't think it's a bad idea to have and we've had this discussion with Kent quite often, is like, exactly how do we go about?
Yeah, we've currently got, last report we got was we have 73,768 acres in farmland preservation. That's not all cropland, that's just acres in, that could be woodlands, it could be pasture. We just got that information, and those acres brought in tax credit of $553,263.
Wait, I'm looking at, did you do one of these for 2021?
Not yet, I gotta do that, I forgot.
Okay. They do these annual reports. I was gonna ask you if we could put all of them in a folder, but I'll talk to you that later. In here, when it says conservation practices, and it says 5,820 acres in the nutrient management, is that new acres or total acres?
That's new, I think.
Because it's more than 8% of all of our acreage would be more than 5,000 acres.
Yeah. That was the new stuff, that was the ones that got cost sharing, or DK did it. Yep.
All right, so I think that's a good suggestion. So let's add some language about that we are at 8% participation with farmland preservation nutrient management plans, and we're going to brainstorm ideas to increase that. Okay, and then the next question I had was under water quality.
Yes, I have one there.
Yeah. So I think that one of our goals should be that we need to keep doing the well study, and we need to fight. I realize that this is a terrible time to be wanting to ask for money to do absolutely anything.
Yeah.
But if it's not in our goal, if we ever finally do have money and it's not even in our plan, then, what ground do we have to stand on?
Right.
So
That was kind of in the back of my head.
yeah, so I think we'll just simply
do it as
add
an
a goal of
Or a
continue
goal, or just an objective to continue.
well studies as funding exists.
I agree.
Was that what you were going to ask about?
That and two things about the well study, because I know they took it out. And the other thing was, how are we testing the trout, number one trout streams and all that? Or to know
We aren't.
DNR's doing that.
I know that sounds punitive, but it's so important, this runoff, and I don't know.
Well, the DNR goes out not every stream every year, but they go out and they do.
Probably like spot checking of different.
Well, it said they only did certain streams, but
Yeah, they only do certain streams certain years, and then if they find an issue, they're not finding what they should, then they look and see what's causing the problem.
So some counties have groups of people, and I don't know exactly what they're affiliated, whether they're just volunteers or what. I only know this because my dad does it. But they have people that volunteer to go out and do water monitoring on different creeks and rivers in their area. And that's something but I don't know who pays for it. Like my dad does it in Vernon County, and I don't know if it's a county thing. I don't think it's
No,
county.
it's not county.
I think it's a Friends of the Water group, that
Right.
that raises money to do the testing themselves, and then they send the data to the DNR.
There are some projects you can do. Years ago,
There's
2020, yeah, there are grants. 25 years ago, we had what was called a pristine grant, and it was Pine River.
Oh yeah, I saw that in the. So maybe one of our goals could be to explore grant opportunities for citizen-led water monitoring groups. And let's see, that if we had a grant writer in Richland County, that would be a perfect thing for them to search out and look for.
Sherry Scott writes a lot.
Is she over at HHS?
No, she's private. She did like the,
Oh, you mean someone you would pay? Yeah.
yeah, she would add it on. I don't know.
All right. So then, anyone else on the water quality have any specific? So I did notice that you deleted the entire section on peer-to-peer networks, and I'm assuming I know how you're going to answer this, and that it was never could get any interest from our farmers. And I'm assuming peer-to-peer networks is specifically talking about farmers, not talking about other.
We were gonna have peer with manure storage, but we do, like, if people are interested in manure storage, we say, hey, you should talk to this person and this person. That's not an official peer-to-peer. But yeah, we did try to get some people together and it just, nobody.
So does a peer-to-peer network, I mean, that, to me, that sounds like a peer, you're referring them to other farmers, so that is a peer-to-peer network. What you're saying is you don't have an official group that's named the Richland County Peer Farmer Group. I mean, I think we're meeting that goal then. We're just, and we don't have to delete it. We just have to say that we have, I mean, because I'm assuming you had to ask permission from that farmer to say, hey, can I refer other farmers to you?
We could do, I could put in there under.
Yeah, just say that, I mean, you just make it a simplified goal in that you have a list of farmers who are willing to share their best, their management practices, and you frequently refer other farmers to them. So I think you have been meeting that goal without giving yourself credit. All right. And I was just curious, so in the other plan, there was a woodland advocacy group. Did they go away?
They went away.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay. Anyone else have any specific things they want to? I do think that you have in here the livestock sighting licensing ordinance. I think you have mentioned to us several times in the last year that we need to update that.
That and the manure storage ordinance.
So should that be in here?
As
As a goal?
maybe under the nutrient and manure management, put down updating.
Yeah, because I think they haven't been looked at in a really long time and things have changed.
At it and then.
Yeah, I know things have happened, but I think we do need to stick those back in there.
Yep.
So go ahead and add those to a goal, both ordinances.
Yeah, I just, other than our committee and you, who else reads this? I mean, is there a farm association in there? I mean, how do we really let them know that all this is?
Okay, so this is required by the state to write this plan.
Yeah.
And then Kathy and I, have to go before the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Board, which is a group of people from all over the state. And they have to approve it. And my understanding is they can be a little bit rough. Like, they expect you to do what you say you're going to do. And if you don't, you should at least be able to explain it. And like, they were upset because at the 5-year, so this plan, we'll do this original plan. And then 5 years from now, you'll do a pretty much a progress update. And they got mad because the chair of this committee didn't go with Kathy to the meeting, and they essentially told him, we don't want to hear it now. We want you to come back with your chair, and then we'll talk about the plan, right? They were not happy. So they're a pretty serious group that expects pretty high standards.
And that's good. I mean, I like it. But I meant after you did all that, and it's okay in our own county so that it's not punitive, how do we let our farmers and our landowners actually know there is a plan? Is that, I mean, it's a lot to read, but.
So one thing we did create a Facebook page, which I think helped a little in just, announcing and just letting people know this. I think we could do a better job. I mean, maybe after this gets approved, that idea, we should go on the radio and talk about it and maybe one of the goals could be, and I hate to tell you because I hate being on the radio, and so I hate to force you to do it, but I do think that WRCO is a good way to get to get in touch with some, many people in this county.
And I've been on before talking about.
You get far less nervous than I do. I hate being on WRCO. Just saying. Not that it's not a great radio. I love Ron Fruit and I love the radio. I just get really nervous. And and don't perform well. So, oh gosh. Okay, so I think we can tweak some of these goals. And so what I would suggest is if you have things that you would like to see, I think send them to Kathy and certainly talk with her and ask questions. And then we'll get it all put together and I'll help you put it all together before the next meeting, in which we'll have a public discussion about any changes and go through it piece by piece. And then,
Sorry, get rid of the mic. And the thing is, once we get this done, even if it's not, this is a draft.
right,
I said
that we're
it's
sending to
DNR, it's a
DNR.
draft, and there's things that come up later that you see or think about before our, I say October, our meeting in October. Then,
Several opportunities to edit.
and then I can edit it and before I take it to county board.
To understand, but I think the more you dive into this, sooner rather than later, the better off we'll be. So, Mr. Carroll?
Land use plan on the internet?
It
anywhere?
is, it's in the documents folder.
No, I'm talking about for the general public.
Oh, it's on your website. It's on the land conservation's page. I believe it is anyway.
It was supposed to be. I
Well,
thought,
I didn't see it, but maybe I didn't find it yet.
I thought we had it on the 2020, not the draft one, but
Right, just the one that's approved.
I
Yeah, we
think it
wouldn't want to
was.
put the draft one on there.
it's been a while.
Okay. So any other questions on that plan right now? Conservation.
Maybe under information. Where's in the report?
The one
Okay. I thought we had the plan on there, but maybe
We definitely should make sure that the new plan, once it gets,
I think at that time when we were doing it was too large to put on there. At that point, now they might be able to do it better.
okay. I mean, at this point, I'm not sure if we're about to put a new one up there. I mean, I guess we could put the old one up there. Compare. I mean, we can compare because it's on our iPad. But the public, yeah, can compare. Okay. Anything else on that? All right. So next meeting. Oh, hold on. I better get back to the actual agenda. Is there future agenda items on there? Probably. Agenda. Oh, it's not. So we're good. Oh, it is. Does anyone, okay, item number 20, future agenda items. Does anyone have any other than continuing to dive into this plan? Yeah. Okay. All right. So adjournment. So here's the deal. I'm going to be gone August 1st through 12th. So we can either have the August meeting on the first Monday of August and Linda could chair, or we could stick with our current schedule and have it the last Monday in July, because we're also going to, because Labor Day is going to screw up September. So we could have, if we wanted to stay on the same schedule, we could have this one is the end of June. We could have the one end of July, the one end of August, and just, it would be the same schedule for the next 3 months. And then we would switch to the first Monday and not get screwed up until probably Martin Luther King Day or something. No, that's in the middle of the month.
I don't mind
Yeah.
sharing, but since we're working so much on this, I find that difficult. I do always have that other meeting, so I always come at 4 o'clock on the last Monday.
Monday,
Yeah, I mean, not that I'm trying to, but
right. I mean, we could, I don't want to make the time later.
The last Monday of July, I will not be here for what it's worth.
Um,
I'm fine that day.
I mean, I'm okay with it being Monday the 1st. I'll just talk to you beforehand and have any changes will just be made and you'll have to walk them through. I mean, and I can't even join remotely that day because I'm going to be driving into Canada. So,
I'm not, like, if it's gonna be, she's gonna be gone, you can always, we can.
I'll call you ahead.
You can stop,
So-
you can stop it.
Because I just want to make sure, I mean, I understand I've read these plans, but I'm not as up on it as Melissa is, and that makes me a little nervous that I'm not.
You'll be fine.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, and like she said, we'll have other opportunities to edit this. This is just, I just wanted to make sure that if there was any substantial changes, that we made those before it went to DNR and then we'll still have opportunity in September and October to modify it if we need to, and I'll be here, so. Okay. All right. It is very important, and yeah. Kathy, do you know when you go before the board, are they going to ask you to tell you what you got accomplished in the 2012 plan before we start in the 22 plan? Seems like that would be important
PowerPoint presentation.
of what you accomplished, and then you go.
Whatever we want to put
I think we should talk about,
No, that's
because you guys got a lot done. I mean, there was, there were things that didn't get done at all, but there was, I mean, most of it there was, and there was many times where we exceeded our goals. That's the other part. So this plan, talks pretty generally, but then they have to come up with a yearly work plan that actually talks how many acres do we want, are we trying to get into no-till, and how many, so it very specifically nails them down to a goal, an actual numerical goal.
If we don't make it, we got to say why we didn't make it.
Yeah. So even though our plan may be vaguer, is that a word? Less vague? Less vague, I think is the right word. No, more vague. Our plan is more,
Right.
the work plan was where the details are. Make sense?
And that's why they took out the requirement of having, you used to have a work plan for the next 10 years. Well, that's impossible.
Yeah.
A yearly one makes so much more sense. Yeah. Okay. All right. So did you have a question? Yep.
Plans on the internet anywhere.
No. So these are work plans that are submitted to the DNR.
Yeah, we have to submit them.
August?
No.
From the previous year. Goal, what you accomplished in 2021 was in March of 22. Right.
What we actually did, we had to submit an accomplishment report by August.
So you did that already.
But for this, our work plan for 2022, I didn't have it by March. And I bring it to I put it together and it's not on the website, it's like.
Yeah, I don't know that the individual work plan necessarily. I think it's appropriate to have, well, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt to have it out there. I mean, is there anything on there that matters?
We've never done it before.
We can talk about it.
Let's talk about it. There are gigabytes of cat pictures and other things on the internet, but I think a report would be easy enough to put out there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think things are changing. I think it's become I think our goal, one of our strategic goals as a county was to become more transparent. And so this would be a way in which we could be more transparent. And I don't think it would take much staff time, and I certainly don't think it would create any kind of controversy. Here we are now, asking again. All right, so that brings us to item number 21, adjournment.
Move to adjourn to August 1. Is that?
I'm assuming it will be the first Monday in August. Yep.
I second it.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jason.
Yep.